Boom, we're back. Yeah, so proper sport came back over the course of the weekend. You're very welcome along to Off the Ball AM this Monday morning. Whatever you did with your sporting weekend, please get in touch with us. We'd like to hear from you, how you spent it. Lots of good stuff happening. Heading into an FA Cup weekend, everybody goes, this is going to be a bit crap. It's an FA Cup weekend. And then it's the final of the Australian Open. McIlroy's in the hunt. Tiger Woods plays well enough for everybody to get pretty excited about it. The leagues in two sports come back, and there are shocks, and there are superstar performances, and there is angry managers coming out accusing the opposition of cynicism. It's exactly what you want.
It was amazing. It was the best opening weekend of the league I can ever remember. It did help that we had two codes, for sure, that we didn't have the staggered football, then hurling start to the league. And it was just amazing football. It was amazing hurling. It was January, and I think yesterday I was at Kerry Donegal, one of the greatest January games I've ever seen.
It did strike me though that it would have been good if you could flex games and kind of change throw-in times so that the Dublin-Kildare match wasn't on at the same time as Cork and Kilkenny, because flicking between the two of them is just a little bit tricky. Yeah,
I know it's not actually doable, but God, the BT goal showed it to do for the Champions League. If you could do that on a league Sunday, that would be amazing. I don't even know if it's possible, even if you did have the technological capacity to do it, because so much stuff was happening.
Especially now with as you say, games on both codes. I don't know if anybody really got enough chance to see Wexford beat Waterford in the hurling, because the other matches were on. And I definitely would have started Sunday's coverage with the David Clifford show, the game you were at, but it turned out the hurling wasn't bad either.
Yeah, it was amazing. I chose even just on Air Sport on a Saturday night, it's great to have 4 games on between those 4 hours. I certainly chose the hurling, which I think might have been the right decision anyway in Cork Kilkenny, but despite the scoreline, there was
I chose football, and for 40 minutes, 36 minutes, it was yeah, this is great.
Well, if I was from Kildare, I would have chosen the football as well, obviously, but yeah, it was an amazing sort of kind of view into what Kildare might be capable of, and then suddenly you realise, wait a minute, Dublin were just gauging this thing all along, and just land that counter punch, and they don't stop counter punching, and Brian Fenton puts in this amazing performance that confirms him as probably the front runner for footballer of the year for 2018, I think.
I know, yeah, and I didn't get my opportunity to put my bet on before that match, but Cian O'Neill came out afterwards, and this is kind of one of the main stories in the newspapers today. Cian points finger at a cynical hit. Kildare have claimed all-star midfielder Kevin Feely was the victim of a cynical hit in their opening Alliance League defeat to Dublin on Saturday. It was quite cynical in terms of what happened and the impact to his head when he was on the ground. But maybe that's what the best teams do better than what we do. It's something we have to look at.
He's right. That's what the best teams do. I don't think he's uncovering any sort of gem that we haven't already heard here, that the Dubs might be cynical. Of course they're cynical. Of course they practice the dark arts, and they practice the dark arts in many cases better than everybody else does it. And he's completely correct. The top teams all do it.
But dark arts is moving your body position in the scrum to make the scrum collapse and you win the penalty. It's not punching somebody in the head when they're prone on the ground. No more details are given of the specific incident.
Yeah, I didn't see it.
Video has yet to be clipped and put online.
So he's not really saying cynical then. He's saying that something violent occurred.
He says cynical.
Okay.
He says,
but that's not cynicism. If he's referring to a strike on a player, that's not cynicism. I would say cynicism is, well, not the scrum thing. The scrum is the dark art. Cynicism is pre-black card, pulling a player down.
Diving. It was going down like a ton of bricks, getting a player booked.
For sure. But all-out violence is all-out violence. It's not cynicism. Cynicism is doing all-out violence, a very big injustice.
Just before half-time, there was a bit of a schmozzle between the two teams. And I'm not going to lie, I was pretty happy with the fact that Kildare were not waiting until they were 10 points down to get involved in this kind of stuff. But I was equally worried about the fact that it's just before half-time. What's going to happen now? You've put Dublin on notice. Maybe it's the first minute of the second half that you start that thing, as opposed to in the dressing room. We were looking around and going, how many All-Irelands do we have? These lads are... What are they doing to us? In Croke Park? No.
Yeah, there was a bit of that. There was also kind of a flip side of that with Kildare. From the bits that I did see, it always just seemed to be a small bit of an edge there. And if, say, a free was given and then a player would come in and push the Kildare player just, to gee him up before the free kick, the Kildare player would always push back. I saw Daniel Flynn do it a couple of times. He was like, no, I'm going to be the last person who gets to shove in this little face-off. And those little victories were something they were targeting.
Yeah, I know, it's terrible that, apparently this stuff matters. Maybe it doesn't, but it feels like it does.
Like any sort of psychological experimentation in terms of figuring out the Dubs, I'm sure, is something you want to try out, and getting the last shove in certainly doesn't seem like something that's going to flip a result in your favour.
Yeah, Dublin were great, had strength and depth, had the usual patterns of play, and also were, for the first 25 minutes, I would say, pretty ring rusty. Dean Rock missed one of the easiest frees he's ever going to miss, and you're like, oh, there might be a chance here. And then in the second half, absolutely clinical when he got the chance. Afterwards, Jim Gavin said, no, not rusty. We weren't clinical enough. It's no excuse. We're only back 2 weeks. It's like, oh man, how good is this team going to be like in 8 weeks' time? And come high summer when they're playing week in, week out. They're actually going to get better by playing all these games in the summer.
And there's shades of the height of the Cody era with Kilkenny about this Dublin team now, just with the matter of plugging and playing with one new player every year. Brian Howard, from what I saw, just seamlessly fits in with this Dublin team. Dermot
Connolly, watching on TV, he was giving out about the use of Hawkeye, I think, in both the hurling and the football, actually. There was one in the football which looked to me all the world for a point, and it wasn't given. Kildare got the benefit of that, but definitely it looked like it should have been a point.
The hurling one was a joke, I thought.
Yeah, there was one in the hurling as well. He was like, so obviously he is still to come back into the team, but he had picked out Howard as one to watch in that podcast that he did pre-Christmas. So it turns out he knows quite a lot about football. Yeah, he's not one to watch anymore. He's arrived and he's brilliant. We may as well have a look at some of the back pages this morning, and there's the GA leads in a lot of the papers. Before we do, the reason you went to that game, beyond the fact that obviously you were scheduled to go, but it was to worship at the altar of David Clifford. Yeah, well, that's what I was about to show you all on the front of the Irish Examiner Sports section. There he is, David Clifford, and the altar has been built. That there was a bit of worshipping going on, a huge cheer when he won his first ball. Bigger cheers though for Sean O'Shea, who is the real deal. Lo and behold, the Kerry fans were actually right when they were so outraged last summer when O'Shea wasn't getting a single minute in Championship football. So just explain who he is. So Sean O'Shea is a Kenmare forward. He was the All-Ireland minor winning captain in 2016. Sublime talent. He played centre forward for that minor team. He played centre forward yesterday. He kicked 7 points, 3 of them from play. The ones from play were brilliant. 2 of them especially were just glorious scores in the first half. The thing is, once Donegal went down to 14 men, they just brought everybody behind the ball, and O'Shea's influence from play was lessened considerably. But in the wide expanses of Croke Park, you can see this kid being amazing. Kind of like the way Clifford was in terms of the way he managed to win ball. Just any ball he wanted to win, he won. He had 11 on his back. Did he play centre forward for the whole game? Yeah, he did. Yeah, roaming around, the most central forward, really. Declan O'Sullivan style centre forward, or? Well, less running with the ball than Declan O'Sullivan would do, more of a kick passer. I think that was the game plan, get the ball in hand and give Clifford a run. And that was very noticeable, that the ball was going into Clifford rather than into Paul Ganey or Barry John Keane. And when it came to dead ball situations, Clifford and Sean O'Shea were taking all the frees, not Barry John Keane and not Paul Ganey. So there was certainly an air of responsibility about these two kids yesterday, and they did extremely well. The thing about these Kerry kids is that Sean O'Shea and Clifford were both from the minor team 2 years ago, and I would seriously contend that the 2016 and 2017 minor teams are far superior to the 2014 and 2015 All-Ireland winning minor teams, who are also just shuffling players through at the moment. Yeah, exactly. There was 11 All-Ireland minor winners, 13 medals in the panel yesterday. Most of them, obviously, O'Shea and Clifford were the only 2 from the last 2 years, and once the rest of those players from the last 2 years get to a certain age where they're ready to go, they'll be much better than even the 2014, 2015 winners. You can see why Eamon Fitzmaurice was so keen to stay on, and it's always great when all the hype is about Clifford, obviously, but O'Shea overshadows him, and now they've got 2 players to be unbelievably excited about after the first 70 minutes of the league campaign. So yeah, exactly. I think that's why everybody's very excited about this. It's that they were brilliant, but also Donegal were sensational. Paddy McBrearty is an elite forward. I still feel that he's underrated. I know he's not really. I know that that's something that probably frustrates you, and it's Mike Quirk, when I was chatting to him after games, like, well, I certainly don't underrate Paddy McBrearty, and maybe I'm just making this up. Maybe nobody does underrate him. I think that there was a lack of consistency to his game, where he was capable of having the performances like he had yesterday, but in the bigger games there'd be 3 or 4 wides thrown into it in the midst of that at key moments, and you feel like now he's kind of reaching his full physical peak, just kicking a free from basically the halfway line and then catching a kick out, turning around and just belting it over, thanks very much, on the run, like against really good defenders. Yeah, he kicked 10 points yesterday. If he'd got into more of one-on-one situations with Shane Enright, he might have had even more. But I actually did some research, believe it or not, before the game. Paddy McBrearty from play, because everybody looks at his 126 in the Championship last year and is like, oh, they were all from frees. But only 13 of those points were from frees. From play last year, he had the same scoring rate as Paul Ganey. He had a better scoring rate than Conor McManus, than Con O'Callaghan, than Paul Mannion, than Cillian O'Connor. So I don't see why people aren't considering Paddy McBrearty to be an elite forward. He is absolutely at the top level. I do think as well that Donegal are actually going to be way further down the line this year than they were last year, because I thought they were reasonable in the league last year based on that Kerry performance in the league last year, and then just they fell flat in the championship. But I think they're going to be decent this year, and we'll hear from Declan Bonner a little bit later on. Okay, so some quick headlines as well. Cliffhanger in Kerry. That's the Kerry story we've been talking about. Pep's SOS, Save Our Stars, blast City boss. Unbelievably violent tackles in the Cardiff game against Man City. You can just about see Sané's ankle surviving the challenge from Joe Bennett there, but obviously not very happy, Pep Guardiola, about that, and I think he's right to be.
It's a sickening challenge, and Neil Warnock after the game was like, well, this is England.
Yeah.
What do you expect? Screw you, Neil Warnock. For what sort of nation is England? I mean, the sort of
his England is the England of Nigel Farage and Brexit.
Yeah, this is the English Defence League version of football that we saw yesterday from Cardiff. Disgusting challenge.
Guardiola's anger over dirty tactics. This is the Times Ireland edition. McIlroy not happy with second spot. Pissed off was the word that he actually used in the press conference. He was 2 up through 10, and then ultimately he was beaten by a surge from Li Haotong of China, who is just 22, ranked 60 in the world before that yesterday. Shot to prominence last year with a brilliant closing round at the Open, and looks like we're going to see a lot more of Lee this year.
Absolutely. We'll have, as I say, some of the GA pages here in just a moment.
Kerry Gold is spreading, is that one? Kerry Gold, cliffhanger in Kerry. They're the headlines that we're getting from Kerry Gold, cliffhanger.
Pretty good. Good start.
Right.
We're going to use them all up, though.
Beautiful shame. Pep slams thuggery. Warnock, he's in England now. As in beautiful game. That's what beautiful shame. Booty.
Well,
kicked with boots.
Each to their own, I guess.
Or is it a reference to arses? I don't know.
It's Clifford as well on the front of the Irish Examiner. New season, new faces, new hopes. 17 pages of unrivalled Allianz League coverage. Anthony Daly there as well. Home advantage. The only guide to unreadable league. Unreadable exactly is how that first weekend seemed to have gone. On Sports Monday in the Irish Times, it's Johnstown Bridge edging out Eglish, which is the main photo there. Great photograph of a hurl breaking there in the Camogie, and Malachy Clerkin saying Kerry edging out Donegal in Triller, while Wexford and Clare enjoy hurling wins. Leagues are back with a bang, they say. On the back of the Irish Independent, it is David Clifford once again. Forgotten man Casey rescues Kerry young guns. Clifford and O'Shea make their mark, but Kingdom Sub steals the show. You've also got Jack McGrath on being happy to share his job with Cian Healy. You've got Roger Federer. You've got Eamon Sweeney as well, saying that Cody's time as top cat has come to an end. And on the back of the Irish Daily Mail, it's Golden Dawn. Kerry rookies naive, but they'll get better, says Eamon Fitzmaurice.
Should we talk about Cody top cat time up?
We may as well do it very briefly. So basically, Eamon Sweeney, in his talking point in the Irish Independent today, has said that that Brian Cody rather is. His behaviour at the Walsh Cup final is a sign of warning here, that he's a manager who's already feeling the pressure despite the fact that he's January. He's saying that they're not winning the games they used to win when the games were in the cauldron, as the game was on Saturday night and Cork managed to come out with the win. He compares him, and hence the Freudian slip with the Kerry manager there, he compares him with Mick O'Dwyer here, saying that for all O'Dwyer's brilliance, his final years with Kerry were deeply unsatisfying as Cork wrested supremacy from the Kingdom in Munster and they entered an unprecedented period of decline. He reckons Kilkenny could be on the precipice of such a period of decline, which you might be onto something there, but whether or not it's Cody's fault that this is going to happen, I'd have my doubts.
Don't they have some great underage talent coming through?
Well, that's the thing.
Tommy Walsh was on with us on Friday night, unbelievably excited about some of the new names that are coming through. Remember, this is a Cork team who won the Munster title last year, who have continuity with John Myler, and who were playing in Páirc Uí Chaoimh for the very first time. It was the first competitive match that they have ever had in their brand new stadium. I think that with 5-10 minutes left to go, Brian Cody's going to be pretty happy that his team are right in it. And I don't know, I'm not writing this Kilkenny team off just yet.
No, especially if they've Killian Buckley back to full fitness. I'm not sure how that recovery is going. That was a horrendous injury to him that stopped the game for around 8 or 9 minutes on Saturday night. I thought he was sensational, and if you've got players like that stepping up to that mantle throughout the season, they will be fine. But you would have your doubts about the succession theory here about like those young players that Tommy Walsh is excited about, how good are they really? I don't think many people, like maybe it's after the under-21 final last year with Eddie Bredin's charges, who some people say aren't as good as they might be perceived to be.
But a bunch of those all-time greats came off teams that had lost a Leinster title in the minor grades.
Offaly, wasn't it? Or was it?
I would say it was Wexford. One of the Jacobs scored a late goal. I suspect, certainly that's in my memory from JJ Delaney talking to us one time about how embarrassed they were to go back. And it's that team had JJ and Tommy and maybe Jockey Terland as well. So
bleached hair game.
Certainly around that time, yeah. So there's just, I wouldn't read too much into the fact that they haven't necessarily won all the titles. I still think that there's a culture that they're being inculcated in when they go training and when they hang out with Brian Cody and when they hang out with that management team who have been there and done that across the decades, who are just going to set standards that are going to raise everybody. And remember, Richie Hogan still has to get fit and come back. TJ only came on in the second half and apparently wasn't fit to start. So I'm just going to... Jury's out on that one just yet. Dan Rowan of the BBC is tweeting this morning that WADA is investigating potential integrity issues with new generation sample security bottles. So these are the bottles that you do your piss in, and then the anti-doping agencies store them for ages, and eventually years later they test them and go, hey, you were juiced up that whole time. You might remember that we learned in Sochi the Russians had found a way to kind of chisel the top off them and then put it back on and make it look as if they hadn't chiseled the top off them. Yeah, but the new ones, to replace the old ones, which were allegedly tamper-proof until the Russians tampered with them, can be opened when you freeze them, which is exactly what you do every time you get them. You get them, you freeze them, and then you can just open them, it turns out now, as opposed to them being tamper-proof. So it may well be that most of the drugs tests that have happened in the last year globally are now going to be thrown out. Because, well, how do I know that someone didn't tamper with my sample? How can you prove that this sample, which is glowing when you test it for some stuff, that wasn't somebody else who did that?
Yeah, I guess there's that. I would have kind of initially thought it would go the other way, that if somebody comes up clean, it's like, oh, well, who put the clean stuff in there? But then that's kind of inverse logic, isn't it? So it is ridiculous that would actually happen, that the science that has kind of told us that this happened, that the samples were being tampered with, would allow us to come to a conclusion that let's have more tamper-proof or tamperable bottles that we can actually hack ourselves just after a quick stint in the freezer. Yeah.
Right, let's move on and get some proper Gaelic football analysis. We're going to hear from David Brady in just a couple of minutes' time, but obviously, as we've been saying, Owen was down in Clarny and he caught up with the managers of both teams, with Eamon Fitzmaurice. I think first Declan Bonner.
It was a hectic game, alright, up and down, and goals flying in and cards flying and every kind of a thing going on, but overall a positive and good for us to come out on the right side. And in fairness to Donegal, they did it very effectively for a team with 14 men. You know, they were hitting us in the counter and they got goals in the counter, and really made it busy for us. We probably had to go and win the game 3 or 4 different times.
Listen, the game changes and turns, and you know, Nathan said no, was disappointed. We didn't start the game particularly well, but we still showed enough going forward that we were going to cause them problems. And you know, when we got in at half time, we basically looked for more. You know, we just wanted men to stand up and be counted.
In terms of David Clifford, everybody was talking about him before the game. I guess that speculation can sort of stop at this point. We finally have whatever 45-minute evidence to actually put into place here, and there's no more speculation really. Not too much anyway.
No, that's it. Look, he's a rare talent, there's no doubt about it, but great for David to get a chance to just play today, and maybe, like you said, that bit of noise now will dissipate. He's made his debut, he's part of our plans, he's a good lad, he's working very hard, and you know, there's an appreciation as well that it is a big step up in terms of the physicality, the athleticism, and like you said, playing against a blanket defence and having to think your way around that. So all of those things are great for David and great for his learning and development, but delighted that he got his chance today, and we'll be looking forward to next weekend now again.
A final point, because I know you're in a hurry to hop on the bus. It was an unbelievably high scoring game. I think the most exciting game of football at the weekend, and it seems odd to me that in the build up to this game, the comments that were doing the rounds about you and your coaching was from Joe Brolly, saying that your under 21 teams were the opposite of what sport ought to be. Looking at that performance today,
I don't even understand in terms of, because we won the Ulster title at under 21 level last year, and if anyone knows anything about Gaelic football, we scored 3-17 against Derry in the Ulster final. We scored 3-17 against Gavin in the semi-final, and we scored 18 or 19. I think it's 19 points against Tyrone in the first round. So I don't know where it's coming from. Somebody would need to get their facts right and look at those games. And there's no point just spoofing out stuff that doesn't match up, to be quite honest.
All right, so there you go. Did you name Brolly? Did you actually name him at the end?
No, I named him in the question.
You named him in the question. Okay, somebody needs to get their facts right. Right. Yeah. Okay. So as you can see, we have Paul Rouse and David Brady. How you doing, lads?
Good, guys. Good.
Paul's here specifically to talk about the Sky issue, right? But in particular, the grassroots movement that you've got going at the moment, I guess it's a grassroots movement if it's an online petition. Essentially, it's asking people to put their names to a petition to try and crystallise the opposition to putting GAA matches behind pay-per-view. That's a fair enough summation of what's going on?
It's exactly right.
Yeah, so Gizzy was on last week and he was talking a bit about just the difficulty that he sees the commercialism of the GAA and the damage that it's doing to the ethos, or what he perceives to be the ethos. And on the back of your piece last week, where you were kind of talking about, look, we need to agree what the parameters of this discussion are before we can actually have the discussion, we figured it'd be a good idea to come in and have a chat about it and kind of explain what's going on. So why now the need for the petition, do you think?
I wouldn't necessarily say it's now the need for it. I would think that debate has been going on for 4 years now, and it has been characterised by misstatements, by the inaccurate quotation of statistics, by claims that don't stand up, and by a general failure to explain why the GAA needs to sell its games to Sky Sports. Now, I want to be clear about this. This is not an argument against Sky Sports. It's not a criticism of Sky Sports or anything to do with that. It's a criticism of a movement of the GAA which claims to be a community-based organisation rooted in clubs. It has never been explained why it needs to put its games behind a paywall. And I'm talking here about its championship matches.
Grant, so, because Diarmuid was asked on Twitter about the Air games, and I'm not sure about that, because is that any games behind a paywall? Is that the point of the...
I think this is the argument, this is the discussion to be had, but I think we start from the point of the Senior Inter-County Championship, which is the flagship, I suppose it is the most important thing that everybody looks for in the summer, and all other competitions are now being... I think it'll be very interesting to see how this year goes, because I think that there are 3 leagues essentially this year, aren't there? Like, when you look at the Munster Hurling League, there's the Munster Hurling League, the National Hurling League, and the Munster Championship League.
Yeah.
So it seems to me that the league, having risen in status for, I suppose, at least a decade, is now devalued, or is now going to be devalued, at least for the top teams.
Potentially, because like we've had a brilliant opening weekend, so you kind of hope that that doesn't filter into...
It will later on, though. I think later on, when teams are...
It'll be next year before it manifests itself.
I think so.
Could be even later on this
yeah, it could be later this league campaign, or it'll be next year. But anyway, I suppose the point about it is, I think what we're talking for here is championship in the first instance. I think that's the first place the debate has to be had.
Yeah.
And it remains to be explained in any meaningful, coherent, sustainable way why the games have to be behind a paywall.
So the argument that had been put forward was that it was about the money, and then before one of the Dáil committees, the GAA said that it was deeply cynical to say it was about the money.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, right? If they'd said it was about the money from the get-go and said this money is ring-fenced for these functions within the GAA, and we either can do without them or we can't, then there would have been, I think, more credibility to the argument.
I think then you can have a proper debate, because I think that then you talk about the value for money, and whether that value for money sits with the ethos of what you claim in the rest of your marketing campaigns and what you write in your books. But from the beginning, the GAA said it was first of all for emigrants, and in fairness to people took that at face value, until you look under the bonnet and you find that what they've done is actually made it 4 times more expensive for emigrants in England to watch games. By the way, they took games off Premier Sports that were being showed on channels in Africa and in Asia, took them all off it, and at the same time put it onto Sky Sports. And there's a thing about GAA Go, which is this online service for people who don't know, an online service for Irish immigrants where you pay, we'll say, 140, 160 euros per year for it, except in Britain, because the Sky Sports games, including the All-Ireland finals, are not on GAA Go.
So you've got to sign up for Sky Sports as the...
So why is the GAA essentially doing that for Sky? Why is the GAA giving exclusivity to Sky when it claims to be supporting immigrants?
So the whole point, the whole reason that you would do this, like if you were to take away, the whole reason that you would involve a party like Sky is to boost the value of your TV rights into the long run, to introduce a proper competitor to...
But there was a proper competitor there already.
See, I don't actually agree with that, right? I don't think that TV3 had put the requisite amount of money in to actually show that they were legitimate players for Package A, right? And in the long run...
Except that's been proven to be wrong, if you don't mind me saying so. Well, because TV3 have, year after year, since then, taken rights away from RTE. Look at where rugby's going this year. Look at where
they lost money on the World Cup. I'm pretty sure that it was break even on the World Cup.
What they're doing
and let's wait and see if they make any money on the Six Nations. I suspect that it would have been much more money to get package A for the GAA than it would have been to get the Six Nations.
And the only thing that's a reasonable point, but what I will add to this is, in that first deal, if you look at the broadcast rights, it looks like that Sky paid about an extra $500,000 a year. Now, show me any sports organisation in the world that sells exclusivity to a pay TV company for that pittance.
Well, it's exclusivity around certain games, a small amount of games which aren't great, right? There's like a couple of games which are...
All-Ireland quarterfinals are not bad.
They're not bad, but we know from doing quarterfinals sometimes you get one-sided matches in those, and they had first pick, I think, which would have been good enough for them. But I think that it's actually a proper long-term you introduce, and this is the other thing which kind of weakens the argument of the people in favour of it. Like, ultimately you have to give Sky value for money if you're going to get proper money out of them, which means you've got to give them more games. And maybe if there's a Super 8 coming down the line, you know that there are going to be a load of games. For example, on the final day of the season, the games are going to throw in at the same time. You probably need a second broadcaster to have those games, some of the games on that day, because you won't be able to show both of them.
So let's look at this from a range of different values. You look, first of all, at the broader broadcasting policy of the association, and you introduce a level of competition, and at the same time, they took all broadcast rights away from Newstalk for radio matches and gave them to RTE. So RTE have exclusivity essentially in radio. So I'd say the policy in general is ill-conceived, ill-considered, and not properly explained to people. Number one. Number two, in terms of what the GAA wants, what exactly does the GAA want from broadcasting its matches? Just after the last deal, by the way, the last deal was for 5 years, not for 3. Incredible decision to double down on something in the way that they did, having said they wouldn't do it, then having said, well, we'll see how it goes, and the figures panned, like terrible figures, all across the place. More people watch a Oireachtas report in the middle of the summer, after midnight, than watch Cork and Clare play hurling. That's just a fact.
The 5-year deal seems...
mad.
Unusual under the circumstances, when particularly there's so many other players who might be interested in getting involved.
In like a rapidly changing media world,
Twitter.
And who knows where this is going, but to lock yourself in for 5 years to a deal which at best was failing and at least was hugely contentious. And there is this notion, and Pádraig Duffy was in Off the Ball last week, and he continued to say that this was done for emigrants. I mean, like, that really is very difficult to listen to. Very difficult. Number one. Number two, Pádraig Duffy after the last deal came out and said he thought there were too many games on telly. Just after having put more games on telly and since then every single year more games have gone on telly.
Maybe the GAA knew about the figures, and that they knew that it was going to bomb like it did in terms of viewership, and that way they locked themselves into the 5 years, because they were like, we have to get this money now, and if we do a 3-year deal, then this deal isn't going to happen a second time.
I have actually given up trying to second guess the decision making, because it is not based in evidence.
I do think that you need a proper competitor, and I don't think just having 2 domestic competitors is the way to. So if your sole interest is in driving value for your rights, you need an international competitor to come in. Because, for example, no one actually knew what was going to happen with TV3. They were massively loss-making, hugely in debt. We didn't know that the venture capitalists would sell out to Virgin. We didn't know that Virgin would invest and reinvest money. So there was a potential for that station to be swallowed up at the time that this deal was done, and I can see why you want another player in the pitch at that point to keep everybody honest.
But there is no contender for the A package. There is only RTE now for the A package. And because Sky can't get the A package.
Fair enough, but they might be able to make that A package just those massive games, just the semi-finals and finals or whatever is protected by the law, and then actually you can have all the other...
Actually, the law is really interesting on this. The law says that the only games the GAA can't sell are the All-Ireland hurling and football finals. The law utterly discriminates against soccer.
Yeah.
It is like absolutely bizarre.
Soccer has no political
Soccer can't
law.
sell its games to Sky. Soccer can sell no competitive matches to Sky.
But so my point, right? If your job is just to drive value, and you've got to get Sky involved, and you've got to get as many people involved as you possibly can, and actually split the games in a meaningful way to give them hope in the future, to frighten RTE to the point where they actually have to invest more taxpayers' money in spending on the GAA. That's a way of. That's why you do that. That's not necessarily what I want.
So can we look at this from a slightly different angle? What is the point of the GAA's commercial policies? What is it trying to achieve?
You have to assume it's to fund the development of the games. It's to be able to hire the coaches, hurling and football.
But at which level?
Participation. It has to be participation, right? You would assume.
Yeah, so I agree with you. But on the one hand, how do you present yourself as a community-based organisation? How do you do that? And at the same time, put your games behind a paywall, and the stats of this are clear. Loads of families in Ireland don't have it. And I think what's really interesting, before it made this, when it made this announcement, both in front of a Dáil committee and repeatedly in the media, the GAA inaccurately quoted figures about viewership, for example. And it took 3 years, but I really admire Nicky Brennan, who came out and admitted that inaccurate figures were quoted. And that tells you everything you need to know.
What do you think?
You know what? You mentioned GAA Go, Paul. I have travelled the world with work, unfortunately, around the times of games. And I'm going to myself, I have a laptop, I pay a fee, whether it's a yearly pass or an individual pass. I can watch GAA anywhere I want in the world. Honestly, from a personal context, I suppose there's one county in the country that has been, I suppose, on Sky more than any of the rest of them, is either Mayo or Dublin, because they're either one of your big games in the quarterfinals or. And for me, it galls me to ring home and say to my father on a Sunday evening, what do you think of the game? Because he doesn't watch it. He hasn't got Sky. None of us have Sky. None of the family have Sky. He won't go to the pub to watch Sky. So you're going to yourself. I honest to God, I think that the championship in Ireland, whether it's in it or not, we have 32 counties in it. I think it should be sacrilege. The league is different, but championship-wise, without a doubt, I think every single person, a young child in the country.
Are there circumstances where there are two games on, for example, like there will be, that are all thrown in at the same time, and you have one broadcaster doing it, and they just can't do it because they don't have, like, in that circumstance?
You know what? I don't know what a broadcaster is, because look, at the end of the day, we're going out now. We're on radio. Well, we're live. Yeah. We're on Facebook.
Yeah.
There's so many mediums, I think, now available to broadcasters, and to not just to big, TV stations, that you're going, you know what? Put it on the internet.
Always for free, though. Always for free.
Well, you know what? There's no such thing in life for free, John. And you know that as well as I know. I benefit from the commercial part of the GAA. But man says I do it, and I do it because I love it. And it's not all about it. I don't do it for the money. But I do think you have. Do you think that it's sponsorship? Like, sponsorship runs everything. Like, if you have the game, people will want to be associated with it, and that's the commercial part of it.
What's your opinion on the kind of AIB format? I know last year, for example, I wasn't around and I watched Glenbeigh compete in the Junior Club Championship final on YouTube, and it was a great service via AIB. And I wonder, is there a future in that, the whole advertising model, that you can just sign up, or not even sign up, watch it on YouTube for free, but you will have to click through a few ads, kind of like the RTE player, you'll have to sustain a few ads at half-time and stuff like that.
I watched Larry McHale's a junior club from Mayo, playing the All-Ireland semi-final there a few weeks ago, streamed live. And I'm going to myself, you know what? This is brilliant. Yeah, I can watch it.
Is this not actually the same thing, though? It's putting your stuff for sale. Is that not the issue here? That's not fundamentally the issue here.
Well, that's what my point is here, that essentially it's not behind a paywall for the consumer, but it is essentially a commercial move. And if it's free to air, it, like as Ger says, it is still the GAA profiting from a commercial interest, but it's just not an English commercial interest or a British commercial interest.
I don't care if it's English or
Japanese.
Or Japanese. I don't care. This is not an anti-English thing, and if anyone imagines that this is an anti-English thing, it was actually the GAA who talked previously about the Sky having a problem with Sky's Englishness, not me. But
so what's the solution here?
I think this. I actually don't know. Is the most honest way to say it. I believe that every championship match that is shown on television should be shown on free-to-air television. That's the first thing I say. Now, after that, we get into an argument around technology and about the capacity of the GAA to deliver its games to its membership and to a wider public. Personally, you can see how the GAA can develop an online streaming service which can be made available to a whole load of people. But if you do that, you have to accept that there are large swathes of rural Ireland where broadband is so poor that is not going to be simple.
You would hope that 4G, by the time they get their stuff together at the end of this deal, will be good enough to blanket the country, and that everybody should be able to get it by the time the 5 years are up, for example.
Yes, and really, to be relying on AIB to do that, really, that's, I mean, it would enable AIB, and this is a side point, but it should be made, AIB, who basically robbed from 10,000 of their customers when they took them off trackers, wouldn't they be better off sorting that out?
I think a great idea, and I think what will happen is that the county boards will have exclusivity to do deals and rights from an individual aspect themselves.
If you do that, then the Dubs get richer and everybody wants to pay for the Dubs.
Already, isn't it, with the
you're going to yourself, you know what, if a county can look after their own rights and maybe develop their own form of broadcasting, that it could be a far greater income for them than what they're probably getting from the package at the minute.
Leitrim don't get any money, Longford don't get any money, Offaly wouldn't get very much money, Kildare would get a bit.
We're nearly back to
Offaly after Saturday night, I don't know. The hurlers, maybe not the footballers, but you know what? You go to yourself. There's so many things that can be done, and that can be done the right way for the right people for the right reasons.
So I think that if they were to have come out and explained from the get-go, this is what we're going to do with this revenue, and we need to keep RTE honest, that would have been a far more open conversation, and everybody would have been able to go, no, we're not doing that because that's not what we believe in, or okay, I understand that now. And that's because I think that a lot of people do have a little bit of a, actually, you know, I do watch a lot of stuff on Sky for the people who do have it, or people think I'm happy enough in some instances, and then other people are fundamentally opposed to it, and that's fine. In a big organisation like this, you're going to have people on both sides,
and they do a great job. Sky do a great job. RTE, I think, do an excellent job as well. But as a man says, it just
nobody wants to say that though, David.
Do they not? No,
I don't think so. We have a thing here where there was this. It was repeatedly said in the weeks after. And by the way, I'd say this about RTE and TV3. It's not particularly RTE. I think they did an excellent job covering the championship. We can argue, disagree about what they didn't. But can you really say that Sky coverage has in any meaningful way transformed how we watch Gaelic games? We can argue about little tactics. We can argue whether in some instances it's actually worse. But really, I don't care. I don't care whether you're like X pundit or Y pundit. I don't care whether we have fancy graphics or not fancy graphics. All I care about is, can you see the match?
And that's it. Talking from someone that is a pundit, it's only a sideshow.
Yeah,
the minute the bloody ball is thrown up in the air, the minute the final whistle goes, what happens at half time, what happens at the end, is only an add-on to what really matters, and that's the game. And in any shape, form or sport.
I agree with that.
We'll have the Super Bowl coming up next weekend, and you know what? It's all about the game. It's not about the halftime entertainment.
Well, it's a bit about the halftime entertainment. It's a bit about the quality of the coverage too. I do think that RTE for a long time had their cameras in fixed positions, had the exact same format.
That had changed well before Sky came in.
Well, before Sky, but it happened because TV3 came in.
The ads that RTE made, Dave Berry's ads, unbelievable ads from the early 2000s. All that, this had changed. I mean, people look back. You're right about the 1990s. That's a part of technology. It took RTE with a limited resources a long time to get up to speed, but the idea that RTE's sport coverage before 4 years ago was somehow...
Not 4 years ago, when TV3 came in. I think that they needed competition to get a kick up the ass, and I think that the Dave Berry stuff was great, but I won't
argue against that.
I thought he started doing that with the rugby first, I thought.
Yeah, but I won't argue against that. What I would argue about is the sense that RTE needed Sky Sports to somehow develop modern technology, as if they were going out with handheld cameras and black and white footage.
I do think when TV3 come in, that RTE, it's competition. Yeah, competition, whether it's on the football pitch or in the commercial space, in sport broadcasting, is good. There'll always be competition, because you know what? There'll always be someone that want to come in and be second best and try and be best. Whether it's from the Skies or the TV3s or the Airs or the RTEs. There will always be competition in broadcasting in GA.
The one thing I would say on that, like, I disagree on the point of kind of analysis and enhancing the game. Like, I do think having a higher IQ with regards to your sport is always a good thing, and it helps with competition with other sports. But the thing I agree with you is, if nobody's watching said analysis and they can't form an educated opinion of a game, then what's the point altogether? But I do think that analysis does play an important part. But then again, your point is that it's not necessarily better in the first place.
I'd say you could go around the table here and you could say, I could say you like X analyst and I like Y analyst, I like tea, you like coffee, and really, I'm not sure. I wouldn't be a defining point for me. I don't really care.
It's not a defining point.
I don't really care what.
It only makes a difference on off the ball and who you have. As an analyst.
Paul, you're on your way to work, so we've got to let you go. But thanks very much for joining us. What do you hope in terms of the outcome of the petition is ultimately? Ultimately, you hope the petition is successful to the point where championship games are no longer behind a paywall. But what's realistic in the short term?
I think it's very interesting. More games are going to go behind the paywall this year. inevitably, the GAA have not come out and said how many more are going behind the paywall this year, but they are putting more games behind the paywall this summer, so I think they shouldn't do that. And I would urge people to come, if they believe in this, if people want to do it. I mean, there's a limited amount of things that you can do with a petition. No way near the number of people who disagree with this will sign it, or who disagree with the Sky deal will sign it. We all know that. But it's about making a statement to say, in number one, about what we believe in. And that's in the first instance. The second instance, what I hope comes out about this, is an acceptance. And an acceptance within the GAA hierarchy, who routinely say that this is not an issue amongst people. Well, that's just a denial of reality. Look at motions passed in Clare, in Roscommon, all down the west of Ireland, for example, of people who oppose this deal, from GAA clubs and county boards. This is something, although characterised by the Director General as whining and moaning, opposition to this deal is something from inside the GAA as well as from outside. All right, good stuff, Paul. Thanks for joining us. And thanks, if anybody wants to see it, it's on Uplift. Is that it? It's on Uplift. It's on, I suppose, Twitter and Facebook, all around the place. Grand, okay, good stuff. So let's get to some analysis from the weekend. Here's what Cian O'Neill and Jim Gavin had to say after playing under lights in Croker on Saturday night.
Yeah, I think you need to give critical there as well. In that first half, they went 1-1 up inside the first 9 minutes, and we did get it back after a while, maybe 16th minute. We brought it back to a drawing game, and our hand pass and kick passing certainly was a little bit loose. I wouldn't use the 2 weeks. We're just back 2 weeks now as an excuse. Just wasn't there, and thought they put us under a lot of pressure as well. And they finished out to get that half quite strong. Went 2 points up at half time. Certainly in the second half, I think we're a lot more focused and clinical with our play, and we've responded very well to the challenge that Kildare posed.
You gave some older guys some game time a little earlier than maybe you would have done in the past, the likes of Bernard Brogan, Michael Macaulay. I'll put Stephen Cluxton in that bracket, even though for a goalkeeper obviously it's probably a bit different. What's the thinking behind that? Well,
after today we've only got 6 guaranteed games left in the league, and after that another 2 in the championship, so you're only guaranteed nine games the way in the current system in the season. Non-competitive games, so we're only 2 weeks back, so part of it is just giving guys game time to build up their fitness as much as anything else as well. And for those players who are just joining into the squad, I thought they responded again very well to the challenge, and hopefully they can drive on.
Yeah, I mean, the first half we put in a good shift. Oisin, we went in 2 points up at half time, and we were happy with our performance, even in light of the fact we missed a lot of shots. We were still 35% shooting, which is disappointing. And we did expect a backlash, of course, like any true champions who were going to come at us in the second half. And we thought we were prepared, but we were just caught, concentration-wise, give away a couple of cheap balls. They were ruthless in the counter-attack, very similar to the Leinster final last year, to be honest. We would be very disappointed with both of those goals, and ultimately we were the architects of our own downfall. It's Cian O'Neill there in the aftermath of his side's 7-point defeat. The spread was 6 to the Dubs in Croker on Saturday night. And afterwards, in his stuff with the written press, he talked about Kildare needing to be more cynical because Kevin Feely had been taken out cynically when he was on the ground. I don't know the specifics of the quote there. It's on the back of the Star. So just so I accurately do it, here I go. Okay, so it was quite cynical in terms of what happened and the impact to his head when he was on the ground, but maybe that's what the best teams do better than what we do. It's something we have to look at. You're not allowed to criticise the Dubs in the aftermath of a defeat, are you?
I didn't see it. It's like everything else. If he feels he needs to say it, he said it. But I would go back to say they need to be more cynical, definitely. But it's in front of goal when you have 3-2. Like during last year's Leinster Championship game, they had 3 occasions where they had a 3-on-2 or a 4-on-3, and it happened again on Saturday night. Daniel Flynn got a peach of a goal in the second half, but there was 2 opportunities where he had a 2-on-1 and a 3-on-2, and you know what? That's training ground stuff. That's not being cynical, or it's about time and time again being comfortable and confident and practicing them situations, because they come up last year, and if Kildare had taken the first one where they had a 3-on-2 glorious opportunity, the middleman rarely ever takes that shot. The guy on his left and the guy on his right was 176 points. You could have a major smile on your face today if you had taken that. It would have been interesting, all right, to see exactly what happens from that point forward. But it is interesting that someone comes out after a game and calls something like that, because generally you're like, we've just got to learn about it. It's not like, it's not?
What, say that again?
And says for O'Neill to come out, it's setting out his stall. It's setting out his stall. There's
Magic coffee cup just appeared. That's why I got distracted.
And it's actually a nice coffee cup and perfect, Tommy. 1 sugar, just like I want it. But it's setting a precedent to say, you know what, winner Kildare playing Dublin 4.5 months time in the championship at some stage. I didn't see it. I don't know who was involved in it.
Yeah.
Did the Fitzmaurice thing last year work? When he made similar comments saying that they've got a serious edge.
Who?
To Dublin ahead of the league final. Obviously they got the results.
Unfortunately, nothing that has been said about Dublin has worked. I don't think, and you'll have a lot of it. It's what do you say? I've seen the complete opposite in the build-up to the last year's All-Ireland, really. When you had Mayo Dublin going, gloves, there was no gloves, there was no fisticuffs, there was no slide. Yeah. And the year before,
Lee Keegan,
you know what? If it can make a 1% difference, would you do it?
100%.
Yeah.
Given the fact that the difference between them was in and around 1% last year, but
never look back and regret and saying I could have done this or I should have done this. You go out with your stall, but I honestly think he was Cian O'Neill was he was not upset, but as a manager he didn't like whatever happened. But
Malachy Clerkin had a stat.
These things happen in every game. There was a lot of red cards yesterday too, and black cards, and I'm going first. We're still in January. But I honestly, boys, I think it was great to be back.
Brilliant, absolutely.
I don't.
And it delivered.
I think from Saturday onwards, I'm going, you know what? This is football.
Yeah.
We're going to get.
It doesn't stop now, except for April. It doesn't stop now until August.
You're going happy days, and it's and there was some look at the Kerry Donegal game yesterday, and you can go, sure, there were both X, Y, and Z, and I thought it was fantastic. I thought that the Dublin Kildare game had a lot of intensity in it.
In the first half, yeah. That Dublin had a lot of intensity for that 10-minute period in the second half, at the start of the second half, where they were absolutely sensational.
Scored 2-6.
Yeah.
Overall scored 2-10 in the second half.
You can see Dublin doing that to any team at any point this year, because Kildare obviously knew exactly what Dublin. They had been obsessed with Dublin all year last year and building some way of stopping them in the Leinster Championship, and then were unable to do it. Last year it was really James McCarthy who kind of had that burst of pace a couple of times in the first half in the Leinster final to beat them. It was Fenton. Poor Dave McIntyre was like, Fenton's been a bit quiet, about 25 minutes into the game, at which point he just stood up and wrestled the game. Now, they put it down to Feely being cynically kicked in the head. That's what Kildare's answer to that was, but Fenton was sensational.
Oh, but look, he scored 1-3, but you're going to yourself, and Jim Gavin said, we're only back 2 weeks. 2 weeks, me arse. These guys have never stopped thinking about themselves, their body. They mightn't be doing the runs on the pitch, but they mind themselves, and they're athletes. And you don't become an athlete or not become an athlete over a 2 or 3 week period. Yes, they've went on holidays. Yes, they've had a good time. But do you think these guys don't go to the gym during the day when they're on holidays, or when they were, whether it was in Mexico or as the Mayo team in Singapore? Without a doubt.
No, they've reached that level because that's who they are as people.
And maybe you're going, there's some teams out there that have 35 training sessions done already this year. And you have the likes of the Dublins and the Mayos who hadn't the opportunity, but they have a number of training sessions done.
The Offaly footballers had 42 done between October and Christmas Day, somebody said.
Well, it showed us yesterday if they did. You know what? And you're going, it's for the long term, and it's for, if you want to be the fittest, if you want to get out of your division, you want to make a difference in the National League, you have to be the fittest. You have to be fitter than the next. But sometimes fresher is better than fitter, and I think from a Mayo perspective yesterday, I thought it was absolutely fantastic. Because I envisage, and if yesterday's result didn't go right, I'd envisage a very, very, very hard winter for a team that would become mentally tired. After you lose your first game, Stephen Rochford said it yesterday, Cork 2 years ago, Monaghan last year. And you're going, they did lose the first 2 league games.
Yeah.
And because it has a sudden impact on your team that you're going, now we're chasing, now we're behind, now we're starting to become tired.
That Mayo team on paper yesterday looked really impressive, and then you start to think about all the players they were missing, and there is this line trundled out about Mayo that beyond the first 15 they might struggle, and they might struggle again this year in that regard, but that seems to me that that's not going to be the case.
I wouldn't get overexcited because, you know, I like the likes of Owen O'Donoghue, who came in a corner back yesterday for me and played very well. Scored a point in the process. The problem for me is the likes of, say, Conor Loftus. Like, Conor Loftus played 22 minutes in the National League last year. 22 minutes in the National League. And we relied on him for large parts of the championship last year, especially coming on against Derry.
Is that because of injury, conditioning, getting them up to speed?
Because we've always, you know, we've struggled in the National League every year, whether it's Stephen Rochford or James Horan, because there is a hangover, there is an aftermath of losing an Ireland final, and yet for the body to recoup, for the mind to recoup, all of a sudden, Jesus, we need to win 3 out of the last 4 league games. So all of a sudden, you have to bring the cavalry in. You have to bring all the troops in. Andy Moran played every single game by the first 20 minutes of the first National League game last year. Come on against Kerry. Scored 3 points, and from then on. But again, you're going, well, if they're playing constantly, do you kind of hold back on their training? And I think Donny Buckley, who's the Mayo trainer, has done an unbelievable job over the last 7 years to get them back, to get them to, you know, and when you're struggling for 1 or 2 league games, the last 2 league games in March, April, you're going, we have to put in the work. It will be detrimental for Mayo football ever to go down to Division 2, because Mayo only play as good as they play against.
They have never been relegated, though, have they?
Well, since we're the longest serving team in Division 1, I think it was 1990. Yeah. I was Division 3 in 94, Division 2 in 95, and Division 1 in 96.
Right.
We came up from Division 3 and we've never went down since. And we play as good as the teams we play against. And we show that every single bloody year, unfortunately.
Especially the qualifiers.
Qualifiers or Ireland finals, and you need to be playing against the best, because if you, and again, you can see the likes of Tyrone. Mickey Hart has always said it, you'll never go well and you'll never win All Ireland if you're not coming from Division 1. And I think it's vital. And yesterday's win, even though Monaghan finished with 12 men and they had a massive amount of wides, Paddy Durkin last minute point, I thought was excellent. And to say to yourself, you know what, and the games are going to come thick and fast, to say we have 2 points in the bag. Whoever has 2 points in the bag, go on training tomorrow night, they're going happy days. It's a lot bloody easier.
Just on Donny Buckley there, and indeed anybody who's in Buckley's role around the country, it's a big challenge for them this year. It's a completely different one that previously you could obviously get them peaking and you can rack things up nicely as the year goes on. But this year, April is going to pose a huge problem for those strength and conditioning coaches.
Oh, you know what, and I would, and I'm telling you, I know it, that the likes of Donny Buckley is an absolute mastermind. He is a mastermind of a trainer, strength and conditioning, and getting players right at the right time. Because again, if you look at it, and it's been Mayo are in the National League this year, and then April, and then they're playing the 14th of May against Galway. You're going, how can you get these players right when you can't even have a handle on them? You can't even get you know the 4 weeks with the clubs. And I do think maybe over the course of the summers, when Mayo haven't won any silverware in the last 2 years in Connacht, that probably is part and parcel of when do you really need to push them, because you can only push players so far. And I don't think it's all about the stick approach. I think you look at the Dublin players, they don't train phenomenally hard. They train phenomenally well. I think that's the big thing. It's not about we have to train harder, we have to train on Christmas morning like our 2 teams did this year, in one hurling, one football, and you're going, it's not about that when you come to the top level. And the lower levels, when you're going, oh yeah, I train Christmas morning, I have done more than the man beside me when I'm talking out the national anthem is played. It doesn't really come to it in the Ireland final, it comes to it early on in the year.
That's insane.
Mental. Absolutely mental.
I mean, I see why 30 years ago everybody thought that was important, but things moved on, people read books, analysis happened, science happened.
We're going back to the reality of, and it's working hard. You have to work hard, but you have to work smart. And for a lot of teams that are thrown into this scenario that you're going, wow, you're doing this at this hour of the night, we're doing this at this hour of the morning, on New Year's morning, on New Year's Eve, Christmas Day, you have to send me a picture of a run you're on Christmas morning. That's one team's WhatsApp, and you're going, you know what? It's you're gonna feel good after a shower and eat loads of turkey on Christmas Day, but it's not gonna win you. It's not going to win you games or championships.
Juan Jose 16 on Twitter says the performance of Donegal's McNeilish and the sensational McBrearty might go under the radar, having lost the game in the end against Kerry. Ulster Championship dark horses. Well, McBrearty, we've been singing his praises because Owen was at the game. McNeilish was also great.
Also absolutely fantastic, I thought. Yeah, brilliant. He scored one of the goals, but that wasn't really representative of his performance as a whole. Just sensational around the middle of the park.
I think that the collection of footballers that they have is as good as anybody in Ulster, and I don't know why they'd be dark horses. I'd say they'd be second favourites.
What they learned last year, and it was a hard lesson in life for a young team, but they're not. Like McNeilish is around. He's around 5 years now.
Yeah, he took the year off last year. Yeah. That was the issue,
which will benefit him hugely.
Oh, you know what? And you have an appetite. I seen Gerard Caffrey yesterday from your perspective. He's been gone. Hasn't kicked the ball. He was flying yesterday. And McNeilish was exactly the same. McBrearty, I was reading an interview he did. He's ready to take the role of being the new leader in Donegal, because Michael Murphy is out medium to long term.
We had Murphy in studio recently, and he said he's had a chat with Declan Bonner, and Declan Bonner says you're going to be a forward.
Yeah.
None of this shuffling to midfield. You're going to be a forward.
You're not filling holes. Yeah.
If you put McBrearty and Murphy in the same forward line, and you have those youngsters from midfield and from the half back line surging forward, that's potentially one of the best forward lines in the country.
And you know what? We seen yesterday, or we could have seen what it's going to be like. Declan Bonner has gone and said, the way that Donegal played against against Kerry, you're going, let's play to our strengths. Let's go forward. It's not about a full defence. From seeing it from afar, you were at one. It looked like a fine game of open.
He was pissed off at the Brolly stuff, was he?
Yeah, he was. Like we heard the clip earlier on. He said he mentioned inaccurate information there, which I'm not sure. It's a matter of opinion, really. Because I just kind of thought it was interesting that somebody could be criticised as being worse than the Black Plague or whatever he referred. The Black Death.
This is what did. I didn't hear this now.
Yeah, Brolly basically said that the Gavin under-21s were worse than the Black Death.
The Donegal Gavin.
No. He said the Gavin under-21s were.
He called them the Black Death. So
yes.
the Gavin were the Black Death.
Yes,
and
the Donegal
were worse
than the Black Death. My apologies. That's the clarity brought to it there. And he said that the Donegal under-21s under Declan Bonner were the opposite of what sport ought to be. And I just thought it was curious that would be the case, given yesterday's unbelievable game. That being said, Donegal heaved everybody back behind the ball. I counted 6 Kerry men at one stage between their own 21 and 65, completely unmarked when they had their own kick out. That's the extent they were dropping off. Everybody sprinted back to inside their own half at each juncture. But the one thing I would say just about that Murphy thing is that they don't need him around the middle of the field anymore. I know Nathan Mullins got sent off, but up until that point they'd been holding their own very well around the middle of the park, granted against 2 rookie midfielders for Kerry essentially, but long kick-outs is the way Donegal are going, and they're going to win a lot of them, and they can start their attacks from there with that great platform in midfield that they have.
You know what? And the Kerry boys with Sean O'Shea, you have Clifford. You know it's an exciting time.
It is, isn't it?
You know what? It's you're going. Well, I can't wait to go and see what all the talk is about. But
next Saturday in Castlebar.
This is not talk. This is these guys are fine, top class footballers. It's just a pity they're coming to Castlebar.
So the point earlier on that Paul Rouse was making about the league potentially being devalued by the championship later on, like there is a possibility that managers start to park the progress 3-4 weeks in and go, okay, we've got our points, we're safe, we're just getting players game time now and we're just getting minutes into players. Or there's the possibility that, as Tommy Walsh was saying on the TV the other day, a young team needs to win games. They get confidence from it.
Yeah, and without a doubt. And you're 6 points will keep you safe to a degree. Even you can't be guaranteed with 6.
There's no semi-finals this year?
No. So you're going to yourself, is it 6 or do I need 8 to be 100% safe? And going back to it, a manager, whether it's over a 2 or 3 year period, is judged realistically by the league. Because if they can show that there's had progress, that they've gone from 3 to 2 and 2 to 1, even though they might have collapsed in the championship like Galway did last year, Kevin Walsh is still doing a good job. So from a manager's perspective, you have to blood players, but you've also to retain your job. You've got your last year. You're going. We've got to make inroads, and I think that's probably the pressure on some managers where they haven't had the luxury of being able to introduce some of the players because they need to perform and they need to stay up.
Even Galway beating Tyrone, that's good. I'm interested in this.
Yeah.
It's like, if Galway are as good as they have shown in certain things and they can be consistent, then suddenly their team, and it's a real thing that they're coming into a semi-final maybe with a bit of hope next time, as opposed to
confidence. The Damien Comers of this world. He was gliding on top of the Tune pitch yesterday.
Scored 1-2.
Yeah, and like I'm telling you, the league is becoming more exciting than 75% of the championship.
And that's why they fixed the Super Race, to make sure that people were still interested in those games later on.
I just fear that, like, that's why I said to Paul earlier on that I think it's next year when we start to really judge how important the league is, because you could well be looking back at this weekend at the end of the year. I think we will be looking back at this weekend at the end of the year saying, well, that was all pointless. Remember that great game in Killarney between Donegal and Kerry? That mattered not a jot come the end of the year.
Not a jot, but at the end of the day, it matters now. And
That's
as well.
the thing, that you're talking in future tense there. Like, it's
that's
like,
why it matters.
Yes, but so do friendlies matter then. You know, you play a friendly and it's like, Oran McNeilish looks really good in that friendly. He is going to be good. That's how we talk about the league, which is really disappointing, because I love the league.
And I think the league is getting the credit that it deserves, and I think it's getting the respect from outside and from inside.
And if this year's Super 8 kills the league, then it'll be a terrible unintended consequence.
It won't. Trust me.
I hope you're right.
Winter is over. Spring is here. GA is back.
We're saved.
I'm telling you, boys, life is looking rosy, and I'm over the hangover of Mayo losing. You're going, happy days. Yeah.
Oh, it's the hope that kills you. Daniel Brady says, you can say what you like about having football, but the Black Death was much more effective. Keep the tweets coming at Off the Ball or at Off the Ball AM for you. Now, we're going to speak with Daithi Regan in a moment. He's standing by to chat about Offaly's return to Croker on Saturday night, beating Pat Gilroy's New Look Dublin team. Afterwards, Oisín caught up with Gilroy and the Offaly manager Kevin Martin, and also former star Brian Carroll.
Yeah, certainly. Obviously their physicality was huge today. They really put their body on the line, and that's expected though at inter-county level. And we know they've put in the hard yards. The people of Offaly, it's obviously a very close-knit hurling community, and we know that they're putting in the hard yards. But the thing obviously is, for me tonight, was the way they used the ball. They really looked up. They looked for the man in the best position, and every opportunity they got, they recycled it really, really well. And we saw some fantastic scores. 225 is truly a great score, particularly in the 27th of January.
What has Kevin Martin brought?
He's brought hunger, passion probably is the big one. The last couple of years we really weren't happy with the way Offaly were hurling. Sweeper systems really don't sit well with Offaly hurling people. We prefer to have a go. And look, if we're beaten, so be it. Look, we will have some dark days throughout this league and probably throughout this championship yet to come.
It's huge. As I said, some of these guys haven't played at Croker Park before. It's an amazing stadium. The surface was brilliant.
There's an old saying, you're better off with a good big fella than a good small fella. You've gone for a kind of a big man policy, and they're fit as well.
Yeah, there's some big lads in it, but the smallest lad in the team came in and scored a goal. So
it wasn't just about big fellas winning ball, it was about guys winning ball and doing good things with it.
Yeah, we have really good hurlers as well, and they use the ball sensibly, a lot of the time, and we have good point takers. And they hit scores from, I didn't see the stats yet, but it was a good spread across the field. So again, that's down to confidence. For the last number of years, they've been down, and I think even when they came in first, you could see the boys were just sick of being beaten. They just want to throw off the shackles and start hurling again, and they're starting to do it.
Yeah, look, we've got a lot of good lads. The group that we had out there today were capable of performing a lot better than that, so we're not making any complaints. Offaly just deserved their win today, and that's it. We have to look at our own performance and see how we're going to improve it.
Can a defeat like this kind of be a good thing? It kind of maybe sets a marker down and shows guys what they have to do. Are you hoping that's what this turns out to be?
Look, every time you have a defeat, maybe you learn more from that than you do from victory. So, that's what we'll do. We'll sit down and look at this rationally and figure out why we didn't perform the way we intended to.
All right, good stuff from Oisín speaking with the various interested parties after a big win for Offaly against Dublin in Croker on Saturday night. Daithi Regan joins us on the old Skype machine. Daithi, good morning to you. A happy Monday morning to all Offaly hurling fans.
It is. It's not very happy for our football fans, but it's a really good weekend, to be honest with you. Great to be in Croker Park. Really good Offaly crowd there. Saw so many former players up at it. There was a really good vibe coming into the game, and Kevin has a huge respect himself within the county. Kevin would have had a huge respect amongst us, the guys that played with him. Coming from Tullamore, he was the only guy from Tullamore that was involved on the Offaly team. He was a huge asset to us. Before we'd won the All-Ireland in '94, Kevin came on the scene in '93. We hadn't really heard of him himself, but he embedded himself in the culture immediately. He was a natural progression, I guess, to move on to management. He's had good success with Tullamore and he's been with Westmeath, etc. But Kevin understands our culture. And I think speaking to him on Saturday night, he's very grounded. I mean, he accepts that this is one victory and that's it. But what it's done is the amount of people that were talking afterwards about Limerick visiting Tullamore next Sunday, it was just a huge swell of optimism. Not even that we'll beat Limerick, but people saying, just we can't wait to go to it. That's the first time in years that we've had this. So we're not getting ahead of ourselves in any way, but a difference, and the key was, I don't know, Michael Duignan even put a tweet out about him being emotional looking at it. I mean, I was there with my daughter, and she said to me 10 minutes into the game, I've never seen Offaly hurling Croke Park. And then the extraordinary thing was to listen to people around you chanting Offaly during the game, in the first round of the National League, because for the first time in a long time, people had something that we could hang on to. We could look at a bunch of players who were leaving it on the line out there. And I mean leaving it on the line in a Division 1 National Hurling League game. And it was with such pride we watched it. It was incredible. It's a win in a National League game. But what one game has done, and the enjoyment it gave to a lot of people who love our county, love our game, and it's something to believe in, and we're thrilled, we're over the moon, but you know, we know it's going to take a long way, but we have a solid man. We have a really solid man, and the difference is he's not there for Kevin Martin, he's there for Offaly Hurling. And I felt the previous guys were there when they realised that we weren't up to the levels that maybe they thought we were at before they came in. They went ultra defensive, and ultimately last year played with 2 extra defenders, and to me that was wrong, because it was about protecting their own reputation going forward in the management roundabout. Whereas with Kevin, it's not about him or his ego, it's about Offaly and doing the right thing for the culture and for the boys that he's with. So one swallow doesn't make a summer, but by God, Saturday night we all enjoyed it.
Tell me just a bit more about him. He was only 20 when he obviously, just checking there, born in 73, so he's only 20 in 93 when he joins the panel, and he's obviously one of the younger lads on that team that ultimately does win All Ireland for you. I don't really remember him that much as a hurler, a left half back. What kind of hurler was he?
Oh, rock solid. He was part of an outstanding half back line with Hubert Rigney, who was captain in '98, and of course Brian Whelan. Kevin was abrasive, a hard man. I mean, as Duignan said to me, you know, yesterday, you even look at him in interviews, chiselled, hard jaw, strong man, and that's the way he hurled. He was just a rock, a driving force from left half back, and I played in front of him in midfield for the '94 and '95 All Ireland finals. But what I like about Kevin Martin, even then, Kevin wasn't afraid to tell you if your shoulder wasn't to the wheel. And Kevin and I wouldn't probably have been the best of pals in the early days in the hurling. You know, Kevin would have got on my case quite a bit about fitness, or maybe lack of fitness during the league, and he wasn't shy about telling you. And so much respect for him for that. And we spoke about it towards the latter end of our careers. A lot of respect for him. He went in as player manager with Tullamore, unhurled it in 2009, and they won a county final. Unhurled it, there would have been 100 to 1 at the start of the year, and he was well in his 30s at that stage and played full forward as well. So he has huge respect in the county. He always did. As a player, he had huge respect. He was quiet off the pitch, minded himself well, but a great Offaly man who is much respected in our county, and he hasn't gained extra respect for that because of Saturday night. He had that anyway. But we're just glad that he's there, and we have a great respect for him. And like I say, I spoke with him Saturday night, but he was so down to earth about it. Listen, we got to win, was his view. We've got to win. And we just kind of said, well, Kevin, you're giving something back. You're giving something to those guys. And they're big and they're strong. And, you know, as he said himself in his interview, we're sick and tired of losing. Players get sick and tired of losing. I mean, I met with Richie Connor and Pádraig Dunn off the Offaly 82 team yesterday, and they were pretty distraught at what they'd seen in Tullamore against Longford. And they said, and there was such a vibe after last night in the hurling. We really all felt good. The football people, we felt good going into the game. We were saying, God, what a night last night was. The footballers can do the same thing. you feed off it, and when you've been down for so long and so many of us have known such success, but we've had such many barren years that you feed off anything. But Saturday night was quite extraordinary for a National League game. The joy on people's faces, and to hear men, women and children chanting Offaly at a game. Okay, Dublin will say, and we're not interested really, Dublin will say they were shorn of a lot of players. They were, but this was about Offaly Saturday night.
Yeah, because at the start of the year, and maybe more at the end of last year, it looked like we could be entering a new dark period for Offaly Hurling, with the potential for relegation from the Leinster Championship this year for the first time proper. And people were kind of putting that together with last season and thinking, geez, where is it actually going to end? But when you start getting these types of results, you begin to mobilise support, more people start to believe in things, and all of a sudden it becomes its own self-fulfilling prophecy.
Totally, Jerry. Yeah, it's well said. I mean, and that's the reality of it. Coming out after we had been beaten by Waterford last year, and we played our two wing forwards as sweepers. It was, I remember I covered a game with you guys, and the feeling afterwards from people, I mean, I actually spoke to the Offaly manager at the time after the game, and I said to him, I think the way you've set up was wrong. It sent a message out to the players immediately. We're going to lose, but you know what, we're going to try and keep it down. And there was no sweepers employed the other night. Dublin at times in the second half tried to run the ball the length of the field. Offaly ultimately would turn it over, and in the space of a flash, it was just a long ball up the field, but not aimless. Everyone was always trying to put someone into space to play heads-up hurling, and that doesn't take 5 passes to do it. That invariably can take 1 pass on an overlap, and the receiver then was always looking up. There was no aimless hurling, and that breeds confidence. And I can tell you there's going to be a really good crowd at the game next Sunday against Limerick, and I think Limerick are good. Obviously they're shorn of the club players involved in the Club All-Ireland semi-final, and they always travel in big numbers, and over the years we've been playing them in the league. Limerick have outnumbered Offaly at National League games in Tullamore, and that's been well commented on. That's not going to be the case next Sunday. We're going to have a really big crowd, and like you said, you're correctly said, this is what it breeds. We're grounded. We know where we're at, but what we witnessed on Saturday night was, it's an opening salvo. It's not a battle won, but it's an opening salvo to say, we have hurlers in our county. People in the county care about them, and we now have a manager who's given them a licence to express themselves, and not to be afraid and be inhibited, but to be proud of who they are, and not to genuflect anymore to so-called better teams. And we did that for too long. We genuflected before we went out. We genuflected to no on Saturday night. We won't genuflect on Sunday. It may not mean we'll win, but we know what's coming on Sunday night. We couldn't say that for the last, not since Joe Dooley was managing Offaly. We couldn't say we know what's going to happen Sunday. Our boys are going to go out and are going to fight till the last, and are going to leave it all out there. We haven't had that in 8 to 9 years.
Just to move on to the rest of the weekend's matches, because there was some really interesting stuff coming out from the games. Interesting to see Cork pick up a little bit where they left off in last year's championship. It was nip and tuck against Kilkenny, and ultimately the last 10-15 minutes they managed to see that through. They're the type of young team that will really benefit from these close matches.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a really good game, and I did really fancy Cork down there. I like what Cork have done last year. In hindsight, in the All-Ireland semi-final, Waterford were very, very experienced, but Cork's progress through Munster, there's always been talent in Cork. There's good talent in Cork. The dynamic with John Myler is really interesting. I think he's a good man. I think he's a superb hurling man who's a grounded hurling man. I think the progress this year with Cork, definitely a team to watch. I really think Kilkenny are in transition. I think sometimes people are kind of a little bit reticent to write their obituary on the basis that they're terrified Cody won't talk to them, or Cody will savage them. I think Kilkenny are in regression, I have to say, and I wouldn't have them as All-Ireland contenders, and I didn't have them as All-Ireland contenders last year. They're good, they're quite good, but they're not a superb team now. There's been so much change, and that's cyclical. You lose players over time, but they've lost some of the greatest players of the game. You don't overnight change that. And year after year, if you're not winning, well then you lose the lack of arrogance, maybe the wrong word, but this absolute belief that we will beat everybody. I think Kilkenny don't have that in, and that's the biggest challenge he faces, is to keep that culture and maintain that culture in Kilkenny, and that's the greatest gift to me that Brian Cody has over the years. But I really at the moment don't see them as All-Ireland contenders, but I would put Cork up there as contenders, and from what I saw more last year, not specifically the other night, I do think Cork have a lot coming through and a lot of balance.
Do you fear that Kilkenny have lost this amazing skill that they had of winning games all the time when they were in the melting pot? And by extension, do you feel Cork have now picked up that gene, this kind of intangible thing that they will win when it really matters?
Well, I think the lesson against Waterford last year, we'll find out more about Cork this year. I just think they have a greater spread. I think the difficulty with Kilkenny is in getting tight games over the line. When you don't have the quality and calibre of player that they had over previous years, it takes an extraordinary mind. You know, a really good forward will always score more in the second half than he will in the first half when a game is in the melting pot. And not enough of these guys have been in the situation where they've been winning key All-Ireland semi-finals or All-Ireland finals. So they've got to be proven yet. And until such time as they do it rightly, there should be question marks about them. Why Cork over Kilkenny? I just think there's a greater spread in the forward line. I just don't think the dynamic in the Kilkenny forward line, I don't think there's enough class up there, and I don't think there's enough guys proven yet. Now maybe they'll prove us, or me and the others, wrong this year. But from what I've seen to date, I think he's still trying to sort out his full back line. Obviously Murphy is away on duty. Borry Walsh to me is a superb wing back, and albeit a wonderful scorer, I still see him more as a wing back. So it's like the success Kilkenny had over the years. Very few new guys were breaking through into it, and then you get a tranche of players in the space of a year or two leaving at the one time. It's awful difficult to replace that. You can never write them totally off, but they're certainly not the force that they were, and that's not a criticism of them.
No, for sure. Is Eamon Sweeney calling for him to step down? Is he saying it's time for him to go?
He should now take on a director role, reads the sub-headline for Sweeney's piece. So exactly, he says the air of greatness has evaporated, and their legendary manager, as I say, should take on a more directorial position.
It's not quite calling for him to step aside totally.
No, he wants Cody involved, but I think that his time as manager has come to an end. That's in Eamon Sweeney's opinion. All right.
I want to move on, Di. I want to talk to you about the Clare Tipp game. Before I get your opinion on it, just Clare obviously beat Tipp by 5 points yesterday afternoon. Here is Michael Ryan and Clare's Dave Reidy, who scored a goal and 8, talking to Cian.
That's the thing. It's effort and work rate. If you're a hard working team, there's no excuses not to win your own ball. You can move the ball on the ground as well. It's great to see. 2 points on the board, and again get the recovery right, and we look forward to the next game.
Well done.
Our interpretation of how we need to be this year is having a broader, stronger panel, and we need a bigger base. We've always had big panels, but in terms of game time, I think it's going to get. Is
that because of the championship format?
Absolutely,
more
I think
games.
it's going to. That's a direct implication, we believe, of the format that's coming up in May for us, and that's probably the overwhelming objective that we've got in this league is to broaden the base.
And are you finding that's going to motivate maybe the guys who were kind of 18 to 20, 20 to 25 in your panel, because they know now they probably have more of a chance of getting game time?
We've called it out. We've told them, if the number was 21 or 22, 23 that we've ever used in a championship campaign before, that number probably needs another 4 or 5 names in there of people who will actually get game time. So look, at the rewards are massive for the panel, and it really, I suppose it uses the panel to the absolute hilt. But look at this is match day 1 on the 28th of January. There's loads of hurling to look forward to here now.
Yeah, you did actually remind me there that it is still January, so let's not get carried away either way. Michael Ryan, Tipperary manager, thank you.
Okay, Oisin.
Yeah, I guess the fact that Galway managed to win the All-Ireland from Division 1B last year means that if you are Michael Ryan, you're looking at the league and you're saying, I need more players here. I don't really need the points as desperately as I need to discover who my 25th player on the panel is going to be, because I'm going to need them in the last couple of weeks of August, hopefully.
Yeah, it's a really interesting interview. There was very little reference, and obviously it's a snippet of it, but very little reference to actually losing the game or how they lost the game. And I know Michael has been vocal in relation to the format that's coming up, that he wasn't in favour of it. But I think he's taken a pretty pragmatic view in that it is a different format. It is obviously going to be more games, and the depth of panel, strength of panel is absolutely critical. But let's face it, Tipperary are genuine All-Ireland contenders. The difficulty really from a Tipp point of view is there's no such thing as progress with this group of players. It's either you win the All-Ireland or it's a really bad year. And I'd go along with that, to be honest with you. Over the last couple of years, Galway kind of have been the nemesis. Okay, 2 years ago, Tipp beat them in a classic semi-final and went down and won the All-Ireland. And then, you know, you've Galway winning the All-Ireland. That for Tipp is really poor. They'll believe with this particular group of players they have, they should have won more. And I would feel that over the last number of years, Tipp have got a poor return for the quality of players they've had. They've never put back-to-back over the last number of years. And I think that grates deeply with Michael Ryan. I know it does. And they were hugely disappointed last year. So, you know, he made some ruthless decisions last year. He won't want to lose too many more league games because, again, it goes back to your point here. The more games you win, it creates this role and a good feeling within the squad. If it's a thing you were to lose another league game, you can only keep referring back to, well, it's only January. Then all of a sudden, well, it's only February. And you have championship games coming up in 4 to 6 weeks' time. So Tipperary have a strong panel. He knows what quality is there in the panel. It's not like he's looking for players out of blue. He knows right well who he has. You know, a disappointment yesterday, okay, that's acceptable. We'll move on from that. But let's look at this thing closely with Tipperary. Nothing outside of an All-Ireland final matters. So people will be watching closely, and particularly within Tipperary, as to where they go, because there's pressure on Mike this year.
Good win for Clare all the same.
Oh, great win for Clare. I have to say, I fancied them, especially down there. And I mean, Clare have lost Colin Ryan and guys like this, but in many respects, although there was a new management team in last year, you get the feeling that actually this is really their first year, because Donal Logue had been involved there, which was a continuation in many respects of Davies' regime. So I really feel this is kind of their new year. And again, they're a team like Limerick that I'm just so really looking forward to seeing this year. They'll be massively disappointed to haven't added to the All-Ireland success of 13, because there's a lot of talent in Clare. They have the right dynamic. There's a huge amount of speed. I just felt last year they played a brand of hurling that didn't suit the skill factor that they have, which is absolutely superb. Great pace. But they just need to speed the hurling up a little bit and get it in direct a little bit more. Again, still overplaying it. But that, again, I believe was kind of a remnant of Davies' regime, and that's his way of playing. Clare are a good side. Clare have good hurlers, and Clare are in the mix this year. And they are genuine contenders as well.
Daithi, great stuff. Thanks a million. Enjoy the rest of the week.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye. Have a good day.
It's Daithi Regan there, part of the Offaly Hurling fraternity. Absolutely delighted with the fact that life has started well in 2018.
Good for him. Good for all the Offaly Hurling fraternity. And amazing results. Really didn't see it coming. Like, I know it's only the league, but the way in which they did it, just a pure trouncing. Yeah. It was amazing.
Yeah, one of the most shocking results of the weekend. I think perhaps the most shocking result was the only 3 points win for Galway.
Yeah.
Antrim.
Which definitely wasn't tipped on this show to be a 23-point plus win in our Hurling League preview. Didn't preview many matches, but we previewed Galway hockeying Antrim by 24 points or more.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell happened there, but fair play to everybody in Antrim. And you kind of hope that this is the start of something for them as well. They've taken their next league game up to Dunloy. I can't remember who it is against now. It might be the Dubs, is it? So it's not going to be... When they play in Dunloy or even back in Lougheed, as they might have done in the 90s, then those games are always a good bit closer than they are when they play Casement and get hammered.
Yeah, Antrim and Offaly Hurling Renaissances would be a nice old storyline for this spring, wouldn't it?
It'd be amazing.
And maybe that would give credence to the league then.
Well, I mean, it's about money and it's about investment and it's about supporting people who are on the ground able to do that kind of stuff. And maybe this all is part of our conversation about the rights a little bit earlier on. Some quick comments for you from earlier. We had Paul Rouse in studio. Paul, Diarmuid Lyng and Joe Brolly and a bunch of others have launched a petition which they hope will bring about some change when it comes to putting games behind a paywall in the GAA. Paul made the point that he wants it to be championship, that it should start with the championship and they can talk about other games after that. Diarmuid on Twitter was saying that he thinks it should be all games. So there's obviously a difference of opinion there, but the whole point is that there's loads of differences of opinion and it would be good to just have proper chats about it as opposed to the slightly more intense arguments that we've all been having for 4 years, which kind of has led to nowhere.
Yeah, I do think the debate has kind of, I suppose, cooled off a little bit. Not in terms of what people believe and how important this thing is, but just in terms of the vitriol. Like there was a lot of nonsense that went around initially about the Sky deal that's kind of been thrown out the window, that it is a more rational discussion now rather than a heated back and forth. Like we will still get these, I'm not sure can you call them horror stories, but the anecdotal evidence about people not getting to Sky and stuff, which there is a lot of that being pushed out there.
Yeah, I mean, you can get Now TV now for a tenner for a day to watch a game. So, like...
For one match?
Yeah, well, you get all the Sky channels for a day for a tenner, all the Sky Sports channels for a day. Like,
yeah, it'd want to be one hell of a day of sport to...
Well, it would be like, you know, Kildare playing an All-Ireland quarter-final.
Yeah.
And it's not on anywhere else. I'm going to pay my tenner to watch it. But...
Yeah, if you're...
Principle.
If you're living in... Like, if you're unable to go to the match, you know, if you're... Whatever, if you have to watch it from your own house, I guess a tenner is fine. It's not good value, really, to be honest. Someone could say it's fine, but you'd want to get a bit more bang for your buck for a tenner. $5 maybe.
Daniel J. Brady says, every game is behind a paywall. It's €8 or €10 into a club game. Is it unreasonable to have to pay to see a game from abroad? It certainly works out much cheaper than attending a game. Adrian Sherry says, if RT's league coverage over the weekend is what to expect when no paywall exists, then no thanks. Air showed 4 live games on Saturday. Terrestrial TV won't do that. Indeed, terrestrial TV won't do that. They don't have the money to do it. And I don't think that they want all of the rights that everybody is kind of forcing on them as well at this point. It'll be interesting to see what happens. But getting clarity from all parties involved is going to be pretty difficult. Some of the other stuff that we should talk to you about from the newspapers a little bit earlier on. Federer obviously won his 20th Grand Slam over the course of the weekend. Where Dublin cynical Cian O'Neill certainly thought so. Pep wants help from the referees. Varsicle was the story about the video assistant referee in the Liverpool game on Saturday night.
Yeah, I'm not sure were you watching this.
I wasn't. I was watching the GAA.
Oh yeah. Well, the Liverpool game actually kicked off at 7:45.
How did it?
So you could actually have caught pretty much all the Liverpool game. It was strange. I was just flicking on, and I was like, wait a minute, this game happened earlier, surely. Then I'm like, what? A 7:45 kickoff on a Saturday night in English football, which I think was the first time that's ever happened. But anyway, there was multiple stops for VAR decisions. None of them were incorrect, which is the bottom line here. Everything was correct, people. And at half-time, Jake Humphrey was grilling Chris Foy, I think, about the stops, which I thought was quite amusing because Chris Foy has really no association with the VAR officials that were on duty. And Humphrey's like, but what about the delay? And really pressing him on this. And Foy makes the very reasonable point that we are still in the trial process here. People don't want to mess this thing up too much, so they're going to take a couple of, maybe an extra minute in certain cases to make their mind up. And that was the big issue with, you know, delays for goals to be celebrated and stuff like that. But I think that's the lesser of two evils for sure. Liverpool lost the game rather 3-2. Chris Bascombe today in the Daily Telegraph, his piece is carried in the Irish Independent as well, just does a brilliant kind of takedown of what happened with Liverpool, saying it was the most calamitous, demoralising sequence of Jurgen Klopp's reign after the defeat to Swansea. He says that it turns out VAR came to their aid more than VVD, having a go at Virgil van Dijk there. In defence, 4 players who never played as a unit unsurprisingly resembled 4 players who have never played as a unit. The sight of Emre Can being outclassed by Gregor Krykowiak will be surprising if the same thing had not happened in their Premier League meeting in December or in the Europa League final of 2016 against Sevilla. And then on the VAR, he says, while all 3 decisions were proved to be correct, the time it took to reach them, nearing 8 minutes in total for those 3 decisions, which is a long time. It is a long time. The most important thing here, though, is that Liverpool were crap and VAR is overshadowing this.
The technology will improve, everyone will get over it, everything's going to be grand in just a couple of weeks, right? That's the end of that.
That's my view on it.
But it might take a couple of months, might take a year, but it's here to stay. Tell David Brady he was in Division 3 in 95-96. They beat Meath in the quarters after getting promoted up to Division 2. So after the big row, no, this was before the row against Meath.
96 league would have been, well, the 1996 league.
The 96
as in
final.
95 through to 96.
Yeah.
Or the 97 league, which would have occurred in 1996 after the All-Ireland final.
It's hard to know.
I clearly off the top of my head, I don't know.
And when did it go to a year-long calendar?
Well, 2000 was it? 2001?
November to May, 95-96, yeah. Jody Moylan says it's not all about the game anymore. Much of it now is about the soap opera around it, and the GAA coverage needs to tap into that as much as, say, soccer coverage. Every time you bring in those comparisons, though.
Yeah, I don't know. I keep going back to it, but that analysis point is an interesting one that they were talking about earlier on. How important is it really?
Well, I don't think that it's true that RT didn't improve when competition arrived from TV3, and I don't think it's true that it didn't improve again when competition arrived from Sky, because they clearly upped their game. And I think for too long they've just relied on that old school, let's get somebody who knows the game and get Dunphy, and it's somebody who knows the game plus controversialist, which was exactly what they did for their rugby, and they've tried to push Brolly into that role and just have him in that role as opposed to actually somebody who knows the game. And that just is like, okay, well, we're set up here and we've got our 3 guys and that's what it's going to be forever. But they started bringing in better pundits and younger pundits, and occasionally they even get a manager who might have managed a team in a big game on. I do think that Sky's analysis was better, and I think that if more people had seen it, that would have become more of a talking point, but just not enough people are seeing it. They're not getting it to a big enough audience. Anyway, we'll definitely come back to that.
For sure.
But I'm interested to know how much people do care about it, because there seems to be a debate about whether or not it's an issue. And I think if you're debating whether or not something is an issue, you're probably losing the debate. But maybe get in touch with us about that. Anything else?
Just one last quick one. Phil Healy, the sprinter from Bandon, County Cork, who a lot of people know, she appeared in the Rio Olympics, put in an unbelievable display over the weekend in Vienna. She's only 23 years old, so she's still on the up, and she smashed her personal best in the 400 metres to clock 52.08 seconds, the fastest time in the world so far this year. I know we're only in January, but still, it's seriously impressive. She took more than a second off her personal best and has secured qualification for the World Indoor Championships in Birmingham, which occur in March. She obviously won the event in Vienna at the weekend. So March, Birmingham World Indoor Championships, Phil Healy certainly one to look out for. And there was some sort of questions, if I recall correctly, whether or not Healy would be a 400 metre runner for the future, but I think after this performance at the weekend, she's a 400 metre runner to stay.
All right, that's pretty much all we've got time for on today's show. We will see you tomorrow bright and early. These Monday shows are probably going to be a bit longer, especially when there's hurling and football to get through, and obviously there'll be some Premier League action to look back on next weekend as well. But if you want to get in touch with us, you can follow us on Off the Ball AM. Make sure you turn on your notifications so that whenever the breakfast show goes live, you'll get pinged with that. And of course, you can follow us on on Facebook and YouTube as well. Our subscriber numbers on YouTube are going great guns at the moment because we put loads of full-length interviews up there. If that's your thing as well, you can get them there. Good show lined up on the radio tonight. You'll hear more about that across our social channels all day today. See you tomorrow. Good luck.